Hello everyone and welcome to another casual review. Today, I'm talking about The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD, and this is one of the rare occasions where I get to talk about a game that I have already previously beaten, not the HD version, but the Wii version through the Wii U Virtual Console. And we'll get into some of the differences that I noticed between the two versions in just a little bit. But first, let's start with the plot of the game. Basically, at the beginning of time, these goddesses created the planet, this Earth, and they also created this mystical object known as the Triforce. And this Triforce is an object of immense power, and obviously it developed corruption and this evil power that wanted to use the Triforce for himself in order to rule the world. So the goddesses, they took their humanoid race that they created and lifted them straight up into the sky on this giant floating piece of land above the clouds, way above all of this turmoil, while they had their battle with this prime evil. Hundreds of years passed, this floating piece of rock in the sky ended up becoming land known as Skyloft, and this is where the humans have thrived and developed. And like hundreds of years pass, and the myths and the legends about the surface all become more unknown to the humans because generations pass, and this is where our main characters start out at. Above this floating cloud barrier, there's no way to get past it onto the ground. Now, each of these human residents are also bonded to a Loft Wing. The Loft Wings kind of act like your horses, your steeds. You know, you fly around to these different pieces of floating rock in Skyloft, and it's basically like a paradise. There's not like any turmoil, really. All these humans are just living peacefully. So Link and Zelda are flying on their Loft Wings together. They're happy. There's a little bit of spark of love there, and Zelda gets swept up in this giant mysterious tornado and gets swept to the surface. So with the help of this robotic spirit known as Fi, who is bonded to Link's new founded sword, basically he travels to the surface in search of Zelda. And the plot unravels from there, but I don't want to spoil too much in case you haven't played it. This HD version only came out this year, so I kind of want to be a little more wary of spoilers, but the plot definitely evolves from there. It's not just like go save the princess like Mario. There's a little more at play here story-wise, more than most Zelda games actually. This game is actually chronologically the first game in the Legend of Zelda timeline, so it kind of talks about like the origins of Link and his Master Sword and Zelda and kind of Ganondorf in a way, but I won't go any more into that. And while it is an origin story, there's still like a bunch of stuff that happened before these characters. You come across like these ancient civilizations and the whole Sheikah tribe, so it's not like an origin story to the like beginning of the world, but the beginning of these three souls essentially that keep on getting reincarnated into all of these other Legend of Zelda games. But I'm starting to sound a little confusing, so let's just move on to the controls, because that's the next thing that interests me about this port. Originally, this game came out for the Nintendo Wii, and that means motion controls. So the big gimmick of this game was basically your Wii Mote acted as Link's sword. So if you swing it to the left, Link will swing his sword to the left, and all of those motion controls. It came with its own problems. I remember playing this on the Wii U Virtual Console and being a little frustrated, like sometimes it wasn't perfectly reactive, but it got the job done. So I was curious to see how this game functioned with button controls, no motion controls at all. Now, if you prefer to use the motion controls, you feel free to use the Joy-Cons. They work just as well as Wiimotes, at least from what little I played with the motion controls, but mostly I played in handheld. So how do you map controlling Link's sword, how he swings it? This is all mapped to the right analog stick, and this is all well and good, but in normal 3D video games, your right analog stick is used to manipulate the camera and to pan it around the viewpoint of your main character. So you basically like have to toggle between using the right analog stick to swing the direction of Link's sword and the camera, and to do this, it is mapped to the left shoulder button. So when you're holding down the left shoulder button, it's used to move around the camera, and when you let go of the left shoulder button, it's the motion controls Link's sword swinging direction. I almost wish that this was reversed, where if I was just by default not pressing the left shoulder button, it was the camera, and then if I hold it down, that is the swing direction, but you just kind of have to get get used to it. After about like 2 hours, it was just almost second nature to be constantly holding down that left shoulder button. It's not ideal, but I'm not really sure how you would play this game with button controls without doing something weird like that. So I'd rather have it than not have anything at all. Now, this was the game that came out prior to The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and you can see a lot of building blocks from that game. For instance, there's like the sailcloth that Link uses as a parachute in Breath of the Wild. It's here. Unfortunately, you can't like move around while you're using it. It's basically to stop you from getting any fall damage because you fall straight down, so it doesn't really help with maneuverability and traveling. There's also the stamina meter. This first was introduced in Skyward Sword, and basically it's just like as you're climbing or running, the stamina meter will deplete eventually, and then you'll get tired. It kind of served as more of a nuisance than anything. That's the thing though, I feel like all of this stuff was perfected in Breath of the Wild, but it was interesting to see like where they started getting these ideas from in Skyward Sword. Couple other mechanics, obviously you can fly around on your Loft Wing, and this is used when you're flying around in Skyloft, and Skyloft basically acts like your main hub world, the overworld. In all of the Legend of Zelda games, there's usually like a big old field that you will travel across to get to your next location. In this one, you are flying above the surface of the world, above the clouds, and this is how you will get from point A to point B to these different sections of the world. I was flying around your Loft Wing. For the most part, I feel like this works okay, and I definitely like flying on a giant bird better than riding a horse like most other Zelda games. However, I feel like Skyloft in general is a pretty boring overworld to explore. It's mostly just like clouds and floating islands scattered throughout this entirely too big world that is not nearly as populated as it should be. But this is nothing new to the Legend of Zelda series. I feel like every Legend of Zelda game just has this huge open overworld with not many interesting things to explore in. It's basically just like something to pad out from going from place to place. Like think of Wind Waker, where you're floating above the ocean. It's just like endless ocean with not too many interesting destinations in between. Even just like Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, it's just like this giant field with not too many things to explore. I feel like the only Legend of Zelda game that has really perfected the overworld aspect is Breath of the Wild, and that just blew the door open for a lot of Legend of Zelda things. Now, each Legend of Zelda game also gives you an instrument to play in order to enact certain abilities and powers. So Ocarina of Time was obviously a ocarina. Wind Waker, you kind of like orchestrated music. You manipulated the wind. In Twilight Princess, you would turn into a wolf and you would howl these tunes. But in Skyward Sword, you use a harp, which I think is one of the worst instruments in any of the Legend of Zelda games. Basically, they wanted to utilize the motion controls in the Wii, so you just waggle your Wiimote back and forth, left and right, in tune with the rhythm of what Fi is doing. So it's kind of boring. There's not like a whole lot you can do here, and I felt like they needed to have some sort of instrument, so they just plugged this in, but they didn't really utilize it to its full potential. It's basically just like this extra check mark that you have to go through to learn these harp songs in order to progress in the story, but it's not like you're learning the songs. It's like you're still doing the same motion for each and every song. Your character will just sing a different tune. The last Zelda game that I played was Breath of the Wild, so it was actually a little exciting to go back to traditional dungeon structure. If you've ever played a Zelda game before, it's basically like you go into a dungeon, you get a new item, you use that item in order to further progress through the dungeon, and then you fight the final boss in the dungeon. And it's basically that like same formula in every Legend of Zelda game prior to Breath of the Wild. So it's fun going back to that format. However, I feel like this format does limit things, especially if you are coming off the heels of Breath of the Wild. Basically, like in Breath of the Wild, you go into the open world and it's like, hey, go wherever you want, do whatever you want, go in whatever order you want. It's just like ultimate freedom. You can climb wherever you want. It's just do whatever you want. And if you are going to have a more structured and choreographed story like Skyward Sword, things start to feel a little more limiting. So it's kind of like a pro and con thing here, where it's like you have this choreographed craft path, and it's like they know exactly what tools you will have on your hand, so they are able to develop these dungeons in a way that utilizes all of the tools that you have on hand, but it doesn't make you miss out on things with tools that you don't have quite yet. Whereas in Breath of the Wild, you're able to start anywhere you want, and all of the dungeons don't utilize the tools that you gather over time, because just in case you haven't gotten those tools yet. So every time you beat a dungeon, you go back to Skyloft and you talk to the residents and you can do some shopping, and this is basically like where all of your side quests will come on. And I dabbled in a couple of the side quests, but I feel like I missed out on a ton of stuff. I felt like, you know, I maybe only did maybe 50% of the side quests, and this will reward you with things like rupees, the currency, or extra maximum life. So there's a lot of side stuff that you can do. This isn't anything new to a Legend of Zelda game, but you can totally skip this stuff if you want and just go through the main story. This is gonna take you a decent amount of time anyway. I think like I said, I only did about 50% of the side stuff. Just doing a little bit of the side quests and then all of the main quests, it took me around 20 hours to beat, so it's still a long video game. Now, one of my biggest gripes about this game would probably be having to revisit locations over and over again. So in like Zelda games before this one, you go to all of these different dungeons and they all have these different environments. Like, oh, this one is a snowy level, this one's a jungle level, this one is a water level. So you go to all of these different dungeons, and it gives you a nice variety of environments. Well, in this one, Skyward Sword, you only have 3 different environments. You have like this jungle-y level with a couple of different lakes, you have a volcano level, and you have a desert level. And you are going to revisit each of these locations 3 separate times and no other locations. So they do mix it up sometimes, like, oh, this time the woods are flooded over with water and you have to swim through it. But other than that, though, it just gets a little repetitive, and I wish there was more variety here in terms of like dungeons and environments and biomes. Like, there's not even like a snowy ice level, and that's pretty common in most Zelda games from what I can remember. There's one point where you even have to revisit one of the first dungeons. When you're navigating each of these locations, it will kind of point out points of interest for you to go to in order to progress further in the main quest. I just think it's kind of interesting because it'll bring up your map, and there will be this little X, and they'll say, oh, maybe you want to go here, but you have to toggle on your own waypoint. Just a little minor inconvenience. They have you like actually go in the map and move your waypoint over the X and toggle that on, where I feel like they could just, like, if they're already pointing out the exact location you have to go in, just have the waypoint there for you anyway. Why make me put one on? There's a couple other weird design choices here. I think one of the big gripes that I've heard from a lot of people was the hand-holdiness of it, and this comes in form of your companion feet. Now, in all of the Legend of Zelda games, aside from Breath of the Wild, of course, you have some sort of companion that acts as like your talker, because Link is mute. So this companion will act as your guide, kind of like tell you what to do next, give you hints about what to do. And then this one, it is Fi, and she's like this computerized spirit that is embodied in Link's sword. The biggest problem about this character in general is I feel like she's just kind of like always telling you what to do next, even if it's obvious. Like, the camera will pan over to like a switch, and then immediately afterwards, Fi will pop out of your sword and she'll be like, hey, maybe you should go hit that switch. And it's just like, no, you think so? And that's an easy example, but there's a ton of other examples like that too, where it's like, you know where to go. It's obvious what to do next, but Fi just has to come and tell you what to do next, and it just lays it all out for you. So it is pretty hand-holdy in that way. It didn't bug me as much as I've read it bugs other people, but she still pops up a lot. And I actually hear with this HD version, they reined her in a little bit, because she was even worse in the Wii version. She still seemed pretty bad here though. But like for the Wii, she'd pop out every time your Wiimote batteries were low, and telling you like, hey, maybe you should go save because it's been a while since you've saved. So they've reined her in there too. And they've also reined in whenever you got an item on the Wii version, it would have this description about what the item is. Even if you've gotten the item before, it'll say the description about it again. So every time you get like a red rupee, this is worth 20 rupees, a description will pop up, hey, you got a red rupee, it's 20 rupees. Every time you got a red rupee. And I remember this being pretty annoying when I played the Wii version. They totally took that away, unless it is your first time encountering encountering the item. I do, however, like Thee's voice. It's all robotic-y and echoey. She didn't bug me nearly as much as she did the first time. I actually did feel like she is pretty fun as a companion because she talks very computerized, like there's a 90% chance that there's a danger in the other room. But speaking of laying things out for you, I feel like even the tablets hidden throughout the dungeon are just so blatant. Like in previous Zelda games, you will read a mural on the wall and it'll be all like, it'll be a riddle and it might even rhyme and it'll have you figure out the puzzle yourself, like kind of piece together what this tablet is trying to tell to you. But in this game, if you read one of these tablets, it's almost like reading a walkthrough. Like it'll say, shoot the target across the wall in order to open the wall. Whereas like in a previous Zelda game, it'll say like, shoot between the eyes in order to progress your path. And you know, it's just it doesn't like lay it all out to you like in this game. There is one quality of life thing that I like in this Zelda game compared to the other Zelda games, and that being your map and your compass blended together. In previous Zelda games, you would have to explore the dungeon, you get the map that shows you the layout of the dungeon, and then you have to go find the compass that shows all of the items scattered throughout this dungeon. In this game, they are bundled together, so right when you get that map, you are able to get all of the treasure chests that you have missed up to that point. Another interesting thing that they do in this one is you have to find the boss key, and in previous games, you get the boss key, you can go through the boss door in order to fight the boss. And this one, once you get the key, you have to kind of like line it up with the hole in the door, like rotate it. It almost reminds me of something you would see in like a Resident Evil, where you have to line up this abstract artifact in order to match the picture on the door. Just a fun little extra touch that I bet they did in order to like further utilize the motion controls for the Wii, but design-wise, I thought it was fun. So let's talk about the character designs now. Now, this is nothing new to Zelda, where all of the friendly characters and NPCs have weird, interesting body shapes and faces, and they all look so unique and not like kind of humanoid, but almost in a cartoonish, expressionist way. And this game is no exception, but I feel like the art design in general, it's not my favorite. It doesn't like quite go all of Wind Waker, where it's like that cool cel-shaded look. It kind of goes for a more realistic look, but not quite as realistic as the Twilight Princess. So in the end, you get this blend between the two, and I feel like it hasn't aged the best. Like it looks okay, but definitely my least favorite 3D Zelda aesthetic. The boss designs are pretty bad and bland in my opinion. Most of them are spherical and blobby with just like a couple limbs sticking out. And I'm just thinking about the Zelda game that came out before this one, Twilight Princess, where the bosses are so, like, at least in my mind, maybe I'm looking at it through nostalgia, but they're so more detailed and interesting and exciting. Whereas in this one, it's just like, okay, here's a blob and we'll give it an eye and we'll give it some tentacles and there you go. Or, okay, here's this rock ball and we'll give it some fiery arms and there you go. There's very few interesting enemies here, and there's a lot of repeats in terms of enemies. You're gonna fight a ton of bokoblins, maybe a couple of Lizafos, some choo-choos and some keys, but you're going to be fighting just a ton of these repeats over and over again, just with different color variations. I felt like they just could have gone a little more exciting in terms of enemy designs. They do introduce some new races in this game, never seen in a Zelda game before. Normal Zelda games will have you come across like Gorons, which are in this game, but Zoras, and basically like that's it, humans obviously. But in this game, they introduce some new races that I can't quite remember. There's Kiwis, they're like these little birds that have plants on their backs like Bulbasaurs. And then there's like these ones that are all about digging and they're all about treasure hunting. So at least they designed some new friendly species here. Story-wise though, the main character that I want to talk about is Groose. He's like a fan favorite in this game. Basically, like at the beginning of the game, he's a real jerk. He acts like a bully towards Link because he's in love with Zelda and he feels like Link is a threat to him. But over time, like through the story, you get to see his character development. He's like had the most character development in any Legend of Zelda game, just because like Link is mute and Zelda's always the damsel in distress, so she doesn't get any character development. So you kind of get a little bit through here where you see this big bully actually turn into a kind of more courageous guy who just wants to make the world better. there, and it's fun seeing that transformation. Now, I just want to talk about the Amiibo that came out linked to this game. This was a little more controversial because they had some quality of life function tied to this Amiibo, and I feel like it's hard for Nintendo to find a good balance between like something worthwhile in an Amiibo and something that you won't miss out on too much if you don't have the Amiibo, because at the end of the day, you are attaching features to an Amiibo, this physical product that can go out of print eventually. So some people just might miss out on this extra function for this video game if they aren't able to get their hands on this physical product. So I can understand the frustration tying functions that are pretty important to an Amiibo, just in case people aren't able to get it. But in this case, this new Zelda and Loftwing Amiibo basically allows you to return to Skyloft anytime and return back to your exact location, even if you're in the middle of the dungeon. And I actually feel like this is a pretty cool function, especially if your wallet is full. Basically, you can only hold X amount of rupees before any rupee that you gather up is basically non-existent because your wallet is full. So it is especially nice if your wallet's full, you just zip back up to Skyloft, you spend some of your rupees, and then you can return right back to where you are. This is also pretty nifty when you're low on hearts and you need to just go back to Skyloft and heal up before you continue on exploring the dungeon. So it is kind of a bummer that they attach this to an Amiibo, but that being said, I think that the Amiibo figure itself is quite gorgeous, and I am happy to have this function to be able to use during my playthroughs. I actually didn't use it as much as I thought I would, however. One being mainly because I didn't carry this Amiibo around wherever I went, so if I'm out of the house, I'm obviously not going to carry this Amiibo around in my pocket, so I didn't use it that often. But when I was at home, it was nice to have, I'll admit. I don't know, just like when I'm painting broad strokes about this game, I can say pretty definitively this is my least favorite 3D Zelda game, but it is still a 3D Zelda game, so it's still exciting. It's still got like that formula. You're still that noble knight. You're exploring this world. You're going through these dungeons. You're unlocking new items, and the formula just works. And while it is my least favorite 3D Zelda game, I still feel like it has a lot of merits, and it's definitely worth a playthrough. I think I will give this game a 4 out of 5, and that just goes to show how much I love this series, particularly the 3D Zelda games. It's just design-wise a little rocky, having to repeat these environments. That's my biggest complaint. But looking back, I still think that it's a great game, and I think it's worth a playthrough. Well, guys, that's it for me. Let me know if you have any questions or comments about The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD, and I'd love to hear what you have to say. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye!